So what led to you leaving
The Allred group, well, is that I was in Montana getting ready for the General Conference up there. Oh, there's so many things going on. My uncle wanted me to be his successor. And I tell people in the Allred group, if you don't like it, too bad, it's sad, it's the truth. My uncle wanted me to be the next one to succeed him.
Or at least he told you that.
Yeah.
Maybe like Joseph, he told multiple people.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he did. But I only had one wife. When I wasn't qualified to hold the apostleship, because I only had one wife. And I came really close to marrying a young woman in 1991. He was so happy. And he kept, but she and I called it off. And then he finally told me, he says, I can't wait any longer. He says, he hadn't called anybody to the council in years and years and years. And he says, can I have this spot for you? And then she came back to me and she told me she wanted to marry me again. And we went to this time just the week before, and the time I called it off. I called it off because the real funny is different people have different motives for getting involved in polygamy. To me, it's not about marrying more women that I could have more mates. Is that I had this wife that I totally absolutely love, and for me to marry somebody else, that means I can only be with her half the time. That's how I've always viewed it. I know it sounds terrible.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you look at your father and say that maybe he was deceiving people because he taught things that weren't true, like that he saw Jesus, right? So you taught all these justifications. Were you deceiving people?
Absolutely.
Were you knowingly deceiving people?
No, I wasn't knowingly.
So in your mind, what?
In my mind, I'm responsible for what I taught. In my mind,
No, back then, in your mind, when you come up with it, it was God's...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It was revelation.
Absolutely.
So you could see how your dad, and maybe even Joseph Smith, could come to believe something that wasn't true.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Unequivocally. I've studied.
Now you look back and it wasn't true, but at the time you literally believed it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's how prophets happen, right?
Yeah. Well, you look at...
You've been there.
Yeah. Kind of like I have people ask me, do I believe Muhammad was really a prophet? And I say yes, absolutely. Why? Well, because he thought he was. Because he was able to convince, when you look at himself and all of his followers.
So you don't believe the prophets knowingly deceived, and yet you still believe your dad knowingly deceived.
Well, see, I'm agreeing with you. In the absolute sense, yes, he absolutely knowingly deceived me. But I think he did it for a higher good. That's why I do not like to me, the concept of higher good is the ultimate whitewash for the worst sins. I do not believe in quote unquote the higher good. But so many things have been done in the name of the higher good. I'm an historian. I cannot think of, the worst hijacking of something in the whole world was the name of Jesus Christ to do the most hellacious, awful things. Almost everything the Catholic Church has done has been done in the name of, every heinous thing they ever done. But second to it is for the course of the higher good. What's best for the majority of the people. And that's just simply wrong. You cannot justify that. All ever. And so then it comes down to the point then, you think about it, who has the right to make the absolute determination of what's right and wrong? Like you look at our justice system, is as good as it can be, but still we know there are flaws. What percentage? 8% of the people go to prison. We know for sure, whatever it is. I'm making up that number. I don't know what it is, what the latest research has shown. But you get people in positions who try to do the very best they can. But I remember when I was in high school administration, and I'd see other high school administrators doing what I hope I would never do, and suddenly they'd sell teachers down the river because it was easier for them to send the teacher down the river than to stand up to the parents. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So what led to you leaving the Allred group?
In 1991, I first heard whisperings about sexual molestation in our group, but I thought it was isolated and very rare. It wasn't until 1992 that one of my nephews came to me with his new wife, and the new wife told me that she had been abused in her family. And my thought was, I have to tell my uncle about this because he's going to be shocked. This is going on in our group. And so I had her and her husband come with me to Salt Lake, and we went out to see my uncle. This was a sad day. And so she told Owen about how she'd been abused in her family.
These are men molesting their daughters.
This was actually older brothers molesting her.
Older brother molesting a younger sister.
But by that time, I had had enough education in my teaching career to know that older brothers don't do that just because they want to. They do this because they've either
been molested
or they have seen it.
Okay.
You're nodding your head. I'm talking about. So, but I knew for sure that she's saying that her older brothers had molested her, and so I took her to see my uncle, and he just broke down and started to cry. And my first thought was, wow, I'm sorry for bringing this attention. Then he finally said, what am I going to do? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I don't know what to do about it. Every family, I don't know what to do about it. And then that was the real turning point for me. I said, what do you mean you don't? I didn't raise my voice. I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do about it? We call these men in, we excommunicate, we disfellowship them. We take their wives away from them, their children away from them. He says, I can't. You can't. He said, you have no idea how high up it goes. And I was just shocked. And I went home and I told Tana, I said, and she said, you're kidding me? I said, no. And so for the next nearly a year, he started telling me all of his problems, and it was all low-level stuff. It was the rank and file doing these kinds of things. And then, but finally, he admitted to me that one of the men who had married two of my sisters, who was in the council, that it was in his family. I said, why is he still in the council? Well, I don't let him talk anymore. And so then when word got out that I was sympathetic to it, then I started having these women come to me, these husbands come to me telling me that it was in their families, and I was just shocked. And so I was trying to talk to my uncle, and he wouldn't do anything, wouldn't take a stand. And then I was actually in Montana, getting ready for General Conference there, which my uncle held. And then I got a call on the phone. It was the call that changed my life, and it was when one of the men that I've been associating with, what happened? There was kind of an ad hoc group of us got together. We were all monogamists. They're all monogamists who knew that there was this evil going on, and none of our wives was involved, and they weren't victims, but we were trying to help these other victims. And right away, my older brother, who was a member of the council, and Lemoyne Jensen, they right away said, you don't have any right to talk about this. This is strictly art. And I said, wait a minute. Nobody tells me to walk away from abuse. I do not do that. I don't do that. And so then suddenly I started to become a bad guy, which was, I didn't care, but I was upset about it. And but I couldn't figure out, I was trying to figure out why my uncle was so wishy-washy on it. When he was with me, he'd hold my hand. He said, please, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. When I was in Montana, I got this call from one of the other guys in that group who told me that just that morning he'd heard that finally Joe Thompson's, several of his daughters had gone to see my uncle and told him that he had molested them all and had been doing it for years. And so then.
Do you think there's something about polygamy that leads to child molestation?
It doesn't lead to it. It's not cause and effect. It's not cause and effect. It does, however, highly facilitate it. It creates an environment or situation that makes it very easy for that to become rampant.
Why?
Well, first of all, let me go back and finish my thought. Why that was so catastrophic. Most people, I tell people why that caused me to leave the Allred group, just like that. I knew it was all a lie. And that was because I had believed that Jesus talked to my father. My father talked to Jesus. Well, how could, and then right after I got the call, I called my sister on the phone. She was married to Lynn Thompson at the time, and Joe Thompson's brother-in-law. And I said, is this true? And she said, yes. And I said, did Dad know about it? And she said, yes, he did. And right away, when I heard that, Dad knew that I realized he couldn't have seen Jesus, because Jesus would not talk to my father, wouldn't visit him on a regular basis, and allow his apostles, evil men like that, to sit close to him. I don't know if I mean, to me, it was just instantaneous, just like the whole house of cards just imploded. And I sat in the room. My children call that the day Dad cried. So I was back in one of my mother-in-law's bedrooms, and I sat and cried for almost 2 hours, just sobbing, bawling, sobbing, because I thought of all those things. I thought of all the choices I didn't get to make. I thought of all the mistakes I'd made. I thought of the heartbreak I'd seen, the heartbreak I endured. Then I thought of all the people I taught and the ideas that had been used to bolster their position, to keep women in abusive situations, to convince girls that because of what I had taught, because of what I had said. It was awful, but I was done that day. And I went from being Owen Allred's greatest supporter and my father's greatest supporter to the greatest critic in just one day.
91?
93.
93.
That was July 20th, 1993. And then that was really ugly, because then I became Owen's enemy number one. He did everything he could to destroy me after that.
Your uncle?
That's another story. That's another day. But then back to your question about whether polygamy makes all that possible, and whether, so I think about that. And I hear people say, I one time, a man whom I greatly admired and respected, he was at that time first counselor in the stake presidency where I lived. Wonderful, sweet man. He later became one of the bishops that served with him. But he, at the pulpit, said, nothing good has come out of polygamy. Not one good thing has come from polygamy. And I hate polygamy. There's not a person in the world, I promise you, there's not a person in the world who hates polygamy more than I do. I'm not saying I hate it the most. I can't imagine anybody hating polygamy more than me, because all I've seen is all this heartbreak all my life. But I have to acknowledge the quote-unquote good that it did, simply because it produced the numbers. And it's really interesting because dozens of times I've spoken to firesides in the church. And
in the LDS church now.
Yeah. And President Vance asked me, please don't ever talk about it in a chapel. So I never do it. But I go to people's homes and, usually audience, 30 to 50 people. And I begin with, I say, how many of you are descendants of Mormon polygamy? Every single hand will go up. Never at any time did more than 3% of Mormons practice polygamy. And you look at those 3%, and you look at who their children are today. They're sitting on the stand every general conference.
And that's a good thing?
No, I'm simply saying that's the evident result of that, whether it's good or bad. And so, to be a card-carrying Mormon, how can you say polygamy was a bad thing? Because if you look at the good things that it's produced in the church today, if you're a card-carrying Mormon.
Yeah, if you're
right,
active believing Mormon.
Yeah.
Okay, and so just really quickly, polygamy makes child abuse more likely. Why?
I wouldn't say it makes it more likely. I'd say it provides a more, let me say, it more greatly facilitates the practice and abuse, the flourishing of the practice of the abuse of women or anybody sexually. Because first of all, the secretive nature of it, you don't talk, you don't tell anybody outside your family, you have this secret you're guarding. And any closed society, that any closed society, like for example, a lot of people thought that the Hasidim Jews didn't have any sexual exploitation. No, they just wouldn't talk about it. Till finally, pretty soon one woman says, then all these hands go up. So any closed society is more likely to have abuse of every kind than an open society. And so inherently, the worst problem with polygamy in my mind is that it's a closed society. Because I don't know, I haven't seen any evidence, I can't say yay or nay, whether if sexual exploitation was more prevalent in polygamous families while it was accepted and practiced openly by the church up until the late 1880s. I don't know. I don't know anybody can make a statement, yes or no. So it's not the polygamy in my mind, it's the closed society that it produces.
Do you have a sense for how the believing members might have justified the child abuse? Do you think they had some scripture? Do you think is it just because a leader did it? Is there any chance your dad engaged in that?
I highly doubt that. And I really don't believe for a minute that either of my uncles did. But can I say definitively no? But what I have to then come back to is the whole person. Because when it came out, when his daughter started saying these things about Joe Thompson, we find out there's a whole lot of things about Joe Thompson that the whole family kept a secret. But I guess he would just go into these violent rages. I'd never heard about that. And so my answer to your question is that I can't say whether or not polygamy is more likely to that itself is responsible for it. But I do know that there is, unfortunately, a high prevalence of it in it. But how much higher than it is than the normal population, I couldn't begin to say.
Okay. So 1993 was the end of your... Mm-hmm. And then you say Uncle Owen tried to destroy you. You don't want to talk about that?
Well, it's a long story.
Just high level,
well, just
financially?
Or real brief. Make a long story very short. I had built 3 houses in the Allred group. They had all been maneuvered away from me, and I was left with nothing. I built these things with my own hands. And in 1993, Uncle Owen gave me the title to one of my dad's big houses here in Salt Lake, which I felt was an acknowledgement that I had it coming, that I deserved it.
Even though you had betrayed him?
No. This is before.
Oh,
this
okay.
is before. This is before.
Oh.
This is before. And so a lot of people thought, well, that's the only reason why you hung on to him. That a lot of people say, well, yeah, it's obviously you worked to him real close, so he would do that and give that to you. There was never anything like that. There's no
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. I studied Latin. I always have a hard time saying that. But then after I left the Allred group. I stopped attending. I didn't move. Physically, I was there. But then some of my brothers and sisters remember, well, he shouldn't have any of Dad's property if he doesn't believe anymore. And it's so crazy then how Mom and Bob mentality comes up. So here I had the title to this house, a clear title to a house. It was worth $265,000. And I tell my family, I tell my brothers, I don't want the house. I don't need $260,000. But you can't take everything away from me a fourth time and expect me to start over again. If you give me $50,000, I'll walk away.
What do you mean a fourth time?
Because I had three other houses that had been, diminished and either stolen outright from me or whatever, and so I can't start my life over again.
And the fourth house was where?
This is right here in Taylorsville.
In Taylorsville.
Taylorsville, Utah. And because I had built a house, so here's 2 acres, 3 houses. I had built one of them, a big duplex. I built that one myself, and my brothers got that away from me, got me to sign a deed over, and I never got paid. And so now then my uncle gives me the one next to it. I did not build that one, but I built the one next to it, and I substantially remodeled this one.
Okay.
I didn't get paid for that one either. Okay. I get the title of this one. Well, you didn't build that one. I was, yeah, but I built the other 2. But to me, the crucial one is simply that I was saying, I called my brother-in-law on the phone, who's an attorney, and I said, how much would it cost him to take me to court? He says, this is 1993. He says, it would cost him at least $65,000 just to get you in the door by the time you do it. And so that was my figure. I said, you give me $65,000 and I'll walk away, because that's what it will cost you. No, you will have nothing. And so they all got together and they all voted, because I was an apostate now, because I would become a traitor to my father's memory.
Were you excommunicated?
Well, they don't excommunicate, but if they did that such a thing, I would have been excommunicated, definitely.
You were just labeled an apostate.
Yeah, labeled apostate. It was made very, very clear.
They don't excommunicate.
No, because there's no official membership.
Got it.
There's no official membership. They have the corporation so they can take your money and get the tax collection. But it was a crazy thing. So I find out later when it's all over, if I'd called my family individually and said, hey, did they tell you that if your family gives me $50,000, I'll walk away? They would all go, oh no, they didn't tell us that. And they would have given me $50,000, I would have walked away. But instead they got everybody together. My mother and my dad's, and 2 of my dad's wives were really upset with me. And they painted this picture of me and they all agreed it was all or nothing. They were going to take me to court, just crush me, and make me and so that I lost the house. And then one of our brothers said, well, what if we lose? Well, it's worth it, because we don't want him to have anything, because they were that angry with me. So I understand the mentality coming back the other way. So here are the people that I had known and loved for years and years and years. And now simply because all I did was stop going to church. That's all I did.
No, you called them on child abuse and you made a big stink about child abuse.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I just stopped going to church.
That was, okay, inside you were having problems with it, but you weren't talking about it.
I figured, hey, if this is my father's group, my uncle's in charge. I've talked to him about the abuse. I never talked publicly about it. I've talked to my uncle about it. I made sure he's aware. And then I find out not only is he aware, there are men on his council who are doing it, and he knows they're doing it. And I know that my father knew that they were doing it.
You weren't a dissident. You just
no. I left.
Okay,
I simply left.
Okay.
I said, I'm done. I'm never going back.
Got it.
I never went back.
Okay. And because you went inactive,
yeah,
they came after you.
Right.
And did they win?
No, I won the lawsuit. I mean, they knew going in they would lose. And I don't know how much they spent, but I spent $127,000
to defend a
$60,000 house.
So you came away with how much equity?
By the time it was all done, I walked away with $65,000, which is really ironic. But totally severed me from my family, made me an outcast, which is what they wanted.
From your mom?
From my mother. Everybody.
Was she alive?
Yeah, she was alive.
Your mom turned on you?
Yeah, she stood against me.
Your mom stood against you?
Aunt Melba stood against me. Aunt Mabel stood against me.
Your other moms,
mothers,
your sister wife moms.
And Ethline did not.
Now, you just spoke about these women at the beginning of this podcast with so much love and esteem.
Yeah, I still do.
And yet they all turned against you, including your own mother.
They were manipulated and controlled to do it. That's the really scary thing.
But what was that like to have your mom
and
your sister wife mothers turn against you?
It was awful. That was the lowest point in my entire life. And
you lost all your siblings?
Pretty much. In all honesty, and in fairness to them, I had been, I'm not saying I was their favorite brother or anything, but I was very open. I visited with them all. I went out of my way to talk to them all. And I also had the advantage, I was the only monogamist. They're all polygamists, which gave me a lot of freedom, you know, to go visit and be in different social circles. And then suddenly I stopped going. I didn't show up anywhere. And so then people hear all these things about how dark I would become. My mother, he's dark. I'm living right next door to my mother.
This is sounding very familiar.
Yeah, I'm living right next door to my mother. She starts telling everybody how dark I am. And one of my sisters says, I heard you're really dark. And I said, I'm looking down. I said, am I dark? And what really freaked him out is when I started, and we went, for a year, we went to the born again Christian church, which I loved, but my sons just couldn't take it because, you know, walking into church and having drum sets and trumpets and electric guitars just wasn't the right type of church. But then finally I decided, and there are some things about Mormonism that I really, really, really love, and one of them is Moroni chapter 8. You know, and I went to the born again Christian church. There was this program I went to. It's called Hell's Flames, Heaven's Gates, and it showed these different people. You know, and one of them was this family, the father and the son. They get to go to church that day, but the father and the son decide to go see a motocross race instead. But the daughter and mother go to the church, and she accepts Jesus, and they die in an auto accident. So it shows mother and daughter being brought into heaven by Jesus, and it shows the devil coming out to drag the little boy away. And I thought, I really like that part of Mormonism, and I went back, and that's what got me to go back.
Okay, wait, let's not jump there. So you're betrayed by your mother, your other mothers, all your siblings, your church abandons you.
Yeah.
This is all 1993,
94, 95.
Okay. And so many times disaffected LDS church members end up, over half of the time, become either atheist or agnostic.
Right.
Because they feel they've been so totally consumed by an ideology. I would imagine that for you, having been a tool of them and even become a chief apologist, you might even feel more betrayed.
Right, I did.
Plus it was your dad, so you could see how your dad could be a fraudulent prophet. I imagine it might not have been a hard stretch for you to look at Joseph Smith and say, well, he was too. But it sounds like you didn't go there.
No,
but anyway, so did you ever have this dark night of the soul where you not only lost faith in the Allred flavor of Mormonism, but also in Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, and God, and everything?
I did. No,
you did?
No, I didn't become an atheist or agnostic because I started going to that born again Christian church, which brought me to Jesus Christ, and I found the charismatic, kind of born again Christian religion, which I can't say that I totally felt like I belonged or that I bought the whole thing, but I found comfort and healing there. And but I'm going to say something to you that I think is profound. It's a simple statement. That is, every major decision we make is based 100% on emotion. And after we've made that emotional decision, we construct intellectual mental supports to justify and support and excuse why we have made that decision.
Sounds like you've read Jonathan Haidt.
Oh, yeah. But
The Righteous Mind is the reference.
So I will, but it's not. We're talking about European. Remember, I taught AP history. I can teach philosophy. I never taught it, but I'm simply telling you that I'm very well aware of what I did. And so I went to that show, Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, and I walked out of there and I thought, Moroni chapter 8 looks really good right now, because I can't believe in a God that would send innocent children to hell.
But what about no God? What about all churches are false? Why didn't you ever go there?
But, well, three things. I've always loved the Book of Mormon. I've always loved it. And when chiasmus was found in the Book of Mormon, to me was just an example of the fact that it's an ancient writing.
Even though Dr. Seuss has chiasmus?
Oh yeah, sure. But I like you. That's funny. I like that. Yes, definitely has chiasmus. I'm trying to explain to you how and why I came up with my mental constructs. But here I was, a man with a wife whom I greatly love, and 5 children, and we're all freaking lost.
Yeah, that's what happens.
We're freaking lost. What do? I went to a born-again Christian church for a while. That brought my wife and my daughter solace, but divided me from my sons. My sons were gravitating back to the Allred group because that's what they knew. And
Including Lance?
Oh, yeah. And I looked and I thought, what's best for me?
To have something versus nothing.
What's best for my wife? What's best for my children? And I looked around, and logically and rationally, the LDS Church, mainstream LDS Church, was hands down the best choice. And because that's what, it was a different brand, a different style, a different flavor, but still the heart and core, and so the LDS Church enabled me to keep all the things I liked about Mormonism.
So what year did you
94.
start? 94 you started? Okay.
So I joined the LDS Church in 1994.
Okay, wait. So my understanding is you have to talk to an apostle.
Right.
So tell us about that.
that was a good one. It was really funny because...
So did you see missionaries? Like how did
Oh, yeah, I had an interview with James Falsey and Elder Worthington.
No. To start the process of converting
we
from
went through the
polygamy-
missionary discussions. I had been a member of the church and excommunicated when I was a kid. And there was a time when my dad had all of his kids join the LDS Church.
And you had been a member,
Right.
been excommunicated.
And I was excommunicated later.
You doubly needed a prophet's permission.
But my wife had been a member, and she was excommunicated. My children had never been members. And so we asked to take the missionary discussions, and then and my wife's family I have to say this about my wife's family. Even when I was a card-carrying polygamist, they were always wonderful to me. They were always wonderful to me. Even though I was the wrong kind of Mormon, they loved me and they supported me. And so they were right away. It's kind of like, well, my family's cut me off. Well, Tana's family, it's extended family, not close, but they love us. And so we went there, and they were wonderful. And then we happened to go to probably the best ward in the entire world for me. It happened to be the University Ward, right up by the University of Utah, right there across from Reservoir Park, South Temple. And my daughter was just starting medical school, and she could get on the bus right there. Lance wanted to play basketball for Rick Majerus. That was his childhood dream. We could be right there by the University of Utah. And we moved there, and so this is in the process of buying the house, and then I had this interview with the leadership of the church, and it's real funny because Tana was excited about it, and one of her cousins, whose husband is a bishop, said, I don't know if that's anything to be excited about. That might not be quite as positive as you think it might be. And so we went there. We got there for the interview, and of course I knew it was going to be a hard one for me. And so I went in, and so there was a stack at least 11 inches high on top of President Spouse's desk, and it was all of my books that I published, and then was the cover sheet on the top was my name and my birth date and every significant date in my life, and then it had recorded all three of my marriages. How they got that from the fundamentalist group somehow or other, and then my children's stories in there, and I knew right away I was not going to have a good time, and I didn't think I was going to get in the church at all.
So what did he say or ask you?
Well, President Faust really raked me over the coals because he quoted all these things that I'd said. All the high points of all the things I'd said, challenging the church's position and justifying my father's position. It was all right there. Somebody knows everything I taught, and so they went through that all, and I explained, yes, I taught that, I believed that, I no longer believe that it's true, or this is why I don't believe that it's true. And so...
How did you justify that you no longer believed it was true?
Well, I told him, but I do believe in the Book of Mormon. I still believe in the Book of Mormon.
No, but when you said I no longer believe these things, did you give a basis for?
Oh yeah, I'll explain why. Yeah,
for no longer believing.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Well, I told him first of all those things there. Those were my ideas, and I was the one who created those ideas, and so I knew that they weren't true because I was the one who had created those ideas.
You made them up.
I made them up. It was all my construct. And so now I'm driving in Pinesdale, Montana last week, and I look at these people, and they're going into church to be taught what I wrote. And that's hard for me. It's really hard.
So did Faust, he did rake you over the coals?
No, he raked me over the coals. I didn't believe for a minute I'd get in. He was kind. He was polite. I was going to say kind. He was not unkind. I mean, he was certainly not warm. But he was very polite to me. Elder Worthington was certainly warmer than President Faust was like frost, just like frost, and
so two apostles.
And then Tana went in, and she came out. She would just have tears coming down her face. So I knew she'd had a hard time. And she came up, and then my oldest daughter went in, and everybody loves her. so she went in, but while she was still in there, Tana said, "No, they're not going to let us in." I said, "No." She said, "I didn't know what we were going to do because we were lost as a family. What were we going to do?" And because that was because Mormon fundamentalism had been such an important part of our lives. To simply have that something removed, it's kind of like that's a large part of who we were. And it was like whatever. I can't think of an example more extreme to that to point out. It was just devastating for us. But then I thought I found a safe harbor. And So then Tan and I didn't think we were getting it, and then Raphael came out just beaming this smile. Oh, that was wonderful. That was so awesome. And then all 5 kids came out with this wonderful message, and then we dropped the kids off, and then we went to the park and cried. And it was just so funny to talk about coincidence. The 2 missionaries who'd given us the discussions just happened to be going through Fairmont Park at the same time, and they saw us. Oh, you had your, they thought it was all wonderful. I didn't tell them how devastated it was. But it was during that window that Howard Hunter became president of the church. So we applied for baptism. Ezra Taft Benson died. Elder Faust was still Elder Faust. And it was less than a week later, Elder Faust became President Faust. And President Howard Hunter called my stake president on the phone. He said, give the Allreds the opportunity. So we were baptized in the church.
In 90?
In 94.
4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then in 95, Elder Faust came and sealed us in the temple.
Sealed you in the temple?
Yeah.
How was that?
It was neat.
And all your kids were there?
Oh, yeah, they were all there. So, I don't know what you're expecting. I'm not bitter against the church. I'm not angry against the church. My philosophy is this. I have known a few people who in 1976, 1977, and even 1978 had enough courage to say, one day blacks will hold the priesthood. They were, if not ostracized, definitely not given callings. They were not disfellowshipped, but definitely not included in the fold. 2 years later, they were called visionaries.
Or forgotten.
Or forgotten. Or forgotten. And
more likely forgotten.
But I started, what's real funny is my own journey. I was the traditional homophobic man. I thought gays were, terrible, and it really wasn't until the new DSM-4 came out. And then my oldest son's a psychologist, and he deals, my youngest daughter is a psychologist too. They're both MSWs. And then also I came to realize that a lot of my students were gay. I taught it out at the high school. I shouldn't say a lot. There were 2 or 3 every year that I just flat knew were gay. And I realized I absolutely loved those kids. And then I watched them, and then I had my students giving oral reports at guys like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and they're gay. And somebody said, oh, no, they weren't gay. Well, yes, they were. And I became fascinated by these discussions, and realized how, and I could tell you that I won't, some families that you would know. I had children and grandchildren of general authorities in my classes, and they were just so disillusioned by it. I had mothers, fathers call the school complaining because I was teaching homosexuality in school. And I said, no, I'm not teaching homosexuality, I'm teaching history. Well, why do you have to bring that up? Why do you have to mention it?
So there were children and grandchildren of apostles who were either gay or...
No, I'm talking about... No, I'm saying their children were in my classes. And then they heard me, and then they heard these discussions of homosexuality as...
That weren't anti...
No. Because by that time, to me, it was no more significant whether or not Leonardo da Vinci, the fact that he's left-handed and he's brown-eyed didn't mean any more to me than the fact that he was gay. I mean, that's who he was. But it also explains why his drawings and his statues were all men. And I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. That's kind of those kind of dialogues, and I would have it. But then a lot of kids who had never felt free to talk before realized they could talk in my class. And I didn't allow anybody to be attacked, either side. Every now and then, once I had a girl who was really, took a real strong stand on Mormonism in the church, started talking, and one of these other kids started to attack her, and I said, with all respect, I defended you a few minutes ago. Please grant her and everybody else the same privilege all the time. And so I created that kind of environment in my class. And I had more than a few calls to the school principal because of what I was allowing to be taught in my class. And I had this talk with her. She was wonderful. Her husband was the seminary president. I mean, he was principal of the seminary right there. And she'd been to my seating, she knew my story. And I said, Linda, I'm not promoting anything except for open, free dialogue about history. And to deny that, and I say, and she said, well, do you have to tell the kids that Michelangelo was gay? Do you have to tell the kids that Leonardo was gay? And I said, no, I don't have to tell them they were great artists either. I don't have to tell them they were great sculptors either. I don't have to tell them, And she looked at me and she said, you think it's that important? And I said, yeah. She said, why really? And I said, because I have students I know are gay. I know they're gay. And I want them to have role models they can look up to. And I was still active in the church. I was a member of the High Council at the time.
So from 94 to 2015,
Right.
you
I was
were active, believing,
I was able to make it all work.
and you served in what kinds of...
I've been high priest group leader, young men's president. I taught on the Sec council for years. I taught gospel doctrine. That was my favorite. I taught gospel doctrine for 6 years. And
I bet. And were you sort of a celebrity, local celebrity?
involuntarily.
Because
but
like this big polygamist family.
No, I never talked about it at church. Inside the chapel, I never talked about. I never ever talked about our polygamous past.
About your polygamous past?
None of it. And I just wouldn't talk about polygamy. I just don't. When I go in Mormon chapel, I just don't talk because it's just so freaking divisive.
And when D&C 132 comes up, you just bite your tongue?
Yeah, I just don't say anything. I allow people to view it the way that they do, and that's their choice. And because I don't like to create division at all. I'm not that kind of guy, ever. But I have no trouble standing up for something. I mean, if somebody asks me something, I'll tell you. That's people. A lot of people found, well, you just don't ask Vance.
But you didn't feel like you needed to like correct the record if people misspoke about polygamy or Joseph Smith, or you just were able to just kind of bite your tongue.
I figure, I bite my tongue because I figure, it's kind of like, remember from the good grief, what I'm trying to do, the Mulder, the series of, the truth is out there. When I'm trying to think, what's the name of that? The spooky, never mind.
Yeah, the TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The truth is out there.
Right.
So, but for whatever reason, just and when I was an administrator, I didn't go out actively saying, I support gay kids. I like kids. I never say anything like that. But word got around really fast. All 3 high schools, that word got around that Allred, not even quote, that I quote like gay kids, but I treated gay kids fairly. I stood up for them. I protected them. I guess that's really, they felt that they knew I definitely protected gay kids. And so then I started. I'm not saying they all came to talk to me, but I suddenly had a lot of gay kids who came to talk. They were not in my alphabet. And then I started having their parents come to see me. And some of those, and there were 1 of 3 kinds. Either one who's, I don't know what to do for my... That was, unfortunately, that was the smallest category. Then there were others, I'm so disappointed, it's heartbreaking. What can I do to stop my kid from being gay? And I'd have that conversation. I turned to my son, I had pictures of Lance on the wall, and I said, my son's hearing impaired. Yeah, it's like he was born that way. Yeah, that's who he is. Your son was born gay. No, he wasn't. It's a choice. And I said, I choose to believe it. He was born that way.
Now looking back, comparing it to a disability, do you feel good about that?
No, I'm not saying that it's a disability. I'm saying, because in essence, I would say, just like he has blonde hair or brown eyes, your son being gay to me is no different than him being left-handed or having brown eyes or being 6'3". But my point with my son is that's who he is. I'm not saying that that's a disability. I'm sorry if thank you for correcting me on that, because that's certainly not what I meant.
Okay.
Is that this is who he is.
Got it.
Because I have had a lot of parents get in my office and they want to do, this crying jag about their child has this disability. I try to get support, but to me that's totally useless. You go to your minister or wherever to cry, but that's not my role. I don't mean to sound harsh, but just I can't help you with that. What I can help you with, how can I help your son or daughter feel welcome, feel safe, and be successful in my school?
And so you're just curious, you're starting to support LGBT stuff.
Oh yeah,
what year?
Huge.
Around what year?
Really big time in 2012.
Okay, so after Prop 8, kind of 4 years after Prop 8.
Yeah. Well, we had something happen at my school. It was so stupid, it became nationally blown out of context real fast. And
the clubs?
Yeah, one of the clubs. Well, what happened? A kid at an assembly. Our school colors were black, silver, and red, but because it's hard to find silver clothes, they had white clothes for the juniors. So the seniors were black, the juniors were white, the sophomores were red. And so it's the spirit assembly, which I hated anyway, and the kids are just so totally out of control. But this kid, everybody, they're not supposed to wear hats, they're not supposed to wear a mask, and I was, quote unquote, in charge that day. But every time I turn around, I could see kids with masks, kind of like the Seattle wave. I could see on the corner of my eye, I could see the mask, but so this kid wants a mask. He can't find a mask. He looks down and he sees a white pillowcase on the ground. So he grabs a white pillowcase, pokes 2 holes in it. He's a junior wearing white clothes.
KKK.
Exactly. And away it went. And it became around the world. There were political cartoons about what happened at Alta High School. And it was all, and the principals forced
There was no
resign.
racism behind that.
None whatsoever. However, it was viewed to have been racist. It was viewed to have been racist because if there was one kid of African American descent thought it was racist. And I said to him, okay, it was racist. For you, it was racist. I validate that. And I was so fortunate. This is so totally off the stunt, but some kids came up to me right after the assembly. I had 3 different sets of kids come to me and give me this kid's name. And I knew the kid, really. He's a nice kid. He was just totally clueless. And so I told the other assistant principal, I said, as soon as we're done, I'm going to go have to get that kid and suspend him from school. I can't have that. But they created such a mess in that auditorium that it took me 20 minutes to get down to the office. Well, there's a kid sitting up in the office, kids of African American descent, neat kid. He was 6 years old when he saw a kid. He witnessed a man being murdered in a McDonald's over $5. He come from a very different life. And so he was so upset about that. In his mind, that was racism. So he came to my office to complain to me, and I wasn't there. And so then he went to class. And so he got into class. And what are the chances that both of those kids would be in the same class? Out of 105. So they were in the same class. So then the kid of African descent was determined I was going to sweep it under the rug. So he came back over the hours. By this time, he was spitting hot and mad. And I had written this other kid's name on a piece of paper. And I walked in and I saw this kid and I said, hey, great, just a minute, just give me a minute, I'll be right with you. And I walked over and I gave the secretary, I said, would you please call this kid down? I've got to talk to him. So I said, well, come into my office. The kids just started yelling at me. He said, you're going to sweep this other rug. And I said, no, I'm going to call him. I said, no, I'm calling him down right now. No, you're not. You're going to sweep this under the rug. His parents would come down to school. They were so angry with me because they thought I was going to sweep it under the rug. I said, okay, this is actually, I violated federal law doing this, I'll admit. You can never talk about a student to anybody else. So I walked back out to the secretary and I said, would you please give me that piece of paper? So I handed it to him and I handed it to the kid. I said, now do you believe I was going to calm him down? That saved my career. If I hadn't had his name on that, I would have been the bad guy. It lets me know, these how things get turned on a dime like that.
How does this tie to the LGBT thing?
Because of that, our district's new superintendent realized not only did we have to be tolerant of things coming into school, we had to get out in front of all of these things. We had to be the leader. Rather than representing our community, we needed to be out in front of our community. We needed to create an outreach to the Latino kids, the African kids, to the Muslim kids, to this group and to that group. And that offended a lot of white people because they said, well, when is it our day? And I talked to the kids, it's your day every day. And then the LGBT, and then I called over the district office. The district says, absolutely. And if people ask any question, then I started having people call the school and say, we're going to come pick it. And I said, that's your constitutional right, but we're supporting it. Well, how do you feel about it? I said, I'm totally in favor of it. And it was by that time I'd gotten to know a lot of gay kids.
So normal church experience, leadership callings, 2015 happens. Is that the next
story? Well, I was already starting to get disillusioned with the church because of their position on gays, homosexuality.
So Prop 8 and everything.
Yeah, Proposition 8 was really hard on me. That was really, really hard on me. But my good friends, my bishop and stake presidents convinced me, well, it's, I understand that, but it doesn't really affect you. And I said, well, it offends me. As a citizen, it offends me. But is that any reason to keep you from going to church? And I thought, well, can that really? And so here's a question. Am I going to go out and join the groups and start, because I only have so much time, and I know it sounds like a cop-out, but ultimately I'm a pragmatist now, is what I become in my life. How can I use the best use of my time to do what's best for my family? And I decided that going out and opposing things was not what I wanted to do, but rather I chose to find things that I would support. And but I was definitely against Prop 8. I'm very not vocal about it, obnoxious, but I walk in any discussion, I say, well, I'm against it. I'm totally against that. And I told my bishop, I said, you understand, I'm against it. And he said, well, it's not a missionary, it's not a temple recommend question. And last time I got a temple recommend, he said, you support him? And I said, well, not on Proposition 8. And he says, and this bishop said, I don't think that's really an issue. And I don't, they might excommunicate him today, I don't know. But that's how I got my last temple recommend. My temple recommend expired last year. So
in 2015, what happened?
Well, when the church, came out with this new anti-Christian, very unkind, very anti-Mormon, very anti-Christian, very anti-human policy came out, saying that children of same-sex marriages may not have membership in the church. That is a direct violation and contradiction to the second article of faith. All men are given access to God. Men will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression. And to say that children of gay marriages cannot have access to Jesus Christ because of their parents' choices. First of all, intellectually it offends me. Intellectually it offends me. Philosophically it offends me. Historically, it's just devastating to me. Morally and spiritually, it is offensive, downright offensive. So I didn't go to church the next week. The high priest group leader called me on the phone and asked me about something. I said, I'm not coming back. He said, well, when you come back? I said, well, when those children are gladly accepted in the congregation and their parents are welcome to come.
So that kicked you out of the church?
I was done.
You haven't been back?
Mm.
Okay. All right. So you left the Allred church to come to the LDS church. Mm-hmm. You maintain to this day a belief in Joseph Smith as prophet and Book of Mormon as God's inspired scripture. Mm-hmm. How can you leave God's one true church and retain beliefs in Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon?
We all make our decisions based upon our emotional responses.
So how do you make sense of that?
And so what I'm saying to that is that...
Are you saying God let the church has gone astray?
I'm saying right now is I don't think that... I don't know from where that revelation came, but I know it didn't come from Jesus Christ. It didn't come from the Jesus Christ I worship.
But the church is still God's church? It's just in error right now in that way?
I don't know. I want to say in error. I'd say it definitely has a crisis of leadership.
Does it still have the keys? Do keys matter to you anymore?
Not really anymore.
Keys don't matter?
Mm-mm. Not anymore.
Okay. Crisis of leadership, authority, not as important?
See, so look at it from my point of view. To me, please understand, I'm not offended. I'm totally enjoying this conversation. I'm enjoying the dialogue going back and forth. And what I'm saying is kind of like this gulf between your chair and mine. You know, how do I get from this chair to the other? You know, I have to step across, or I can simply say, well, I choose to make a total break there. And I've done a lot of reading of history in the last while and looking at that, and I've stopped reading Mormon scriptures because I know what they say, but to me, finally, I've come to the point where I look at it is, am I willing to go out and start joining groups to advocate to have the church changed, to put pressure on the church? Do I want to start writing letters? I don't feel that strongly about it. I feel my time is better used with my grandchildren and whatnot. But to me, it's one thing, you know, the several gradations, you know, to be totally in support of something, you know, actively supporting it, or be totally against it. I'm on the other side of this line, but there's this definite cut between. So what I'm saying is, I'm right here with Mormonism. There's a definite cut away from me and the church, because until leadership of the church definitely changes that 180 degrees, I'm not coming back. And I don't believe that my access to the celestial kingdom is going to be hampered by that decision at all. And really, I'm reached the point where I really don't think a lot about what's going to happen. I'm going to be cremated when I die.
How can God let his church go astray?
That is the question that God allows people to make their choices.
But this is God's one true church.
I know. It's terrible. It's tragic, isn't it?
No, but
and so,
we've already got 6 billion people on the earth that are in the wrong church.
Right.
And then we've got the one right church, and God's letting that one go astray. What does that say about God?
What it says to me about God is he allows people to make their own choices.
That's a pretty messed up plan, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But it's still the true church for you?
It is. I won't say it is the true church with a capital T. I don't think. I think it is. I think it is a true church. I think there are a lot of churches out there that have the truth.
So Christianity is still true. Mormonism, the LDS Church, is just one way to access Christ.
I think it's a very part of. We haven't talked about this at all, but Mormonism is the most, without doubt in my mind, the most sophisticated Christian belief system that has ever been created.
So it's the best of a lot of Christian churches.
It's definitely the best of a lot of true Christian churches.
But not based on authority, just based on its sophistication of doctrine.
Definitely sophistication of doctrine. That to me, that appeals to me intellectually. Spiritually, it doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
My wife and I stopped praying for quite a while because I was just so disillusioned. Because kind of like, but in the Book of Mormon, the story where the waters of Helam waters of Mormon, where Alma the younger is getting ready to baptize. Alma the older is getting ready to Alma the older is getting ready to baptize Helam, and he calls them down into the water, and he talks about all can come to Christ, and I didn't see anything there about children of gay marriages being excluded, and I'm not coming back until they're welcome.
Are you worried they might excommunicate you if
I don't care.
What?
I don't care.
Why?
I don't care.
Okay.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Because once you've been ostracized and cut off like I have, lost my family, lost everything, had everybody stand against me, it's kind of like, well, whatever.
Okay. So, have you heard of Letter to a CES Director? CES letter.
I have heard of it. I haven't seen it or read it. No.
Have you heard of Grant Palmer, An Insider's View of Mormon Origins? Mm-hmm. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Have you studied the sort of the modern critiques of the Book of Mormon, its historicity, the issues around anachronisms, horses,
Right.
steel, all that stuff?
No, I haven't read any of those books. My response to you is that I'm just simply not interested in them, and I'm not denying their scholastic worth or their scholarship. It's kind of like I spend, like, for example, I would far rather read about ancient Greece and the Egyptians, and rather than take the time to read that. To me, it's simply an esoteric thing.
Do you believe that the Book of Mormon is an ancient record of actual people that lived 2,000 years ago?
I haven't decided on that one.
Isn't that kind of important if you believe in the book?
See, but I love. There's several things about the book that I love, so I'm not going to throw out the whole thing.
So if you love the book and love the prose and have had good feelings about it, then its actual veracity is less important to you.
Right.
So you're open to the fact that it could be fiction.
I'm saying I don't care.
You don't care if it's fiction.
No, I don't.
Because it's made you feel...
Because it makes me feel good, and I enjoy reading it, and every time I read it, I feel good.
So when Warren Jeffs people say that Warren Jeffs made them feel good, do you ever draw that line and say, I'm doing the same thing Warren Jeffs?
Absolutely.
And...
Because I have, for example, no matter which... I understand what you're saying, and I understand where you're going. I'm admitting to you I'm illogical, and I'm admitting to you that I'm irrational. And I'm explaining to you, I can explain to you why I'm illogical and I'm irrational, because I've chosen what I like. I choose to like that, I choose not to like that, and I choose to like this, and they're not consistent, they're not rational, they do not fit into a larger systemology. I don't, but at the same time, I feel oftentimes people who become very disillusioned with the church kind of like to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and saying, well, there's a whole lot of good. The LDS Church does a whole lot of good in the world. Do I go to conference anymore? No. Do I watch conference anymore? I'll sit down and watch an issue. Do I pay? Yeah, I make contributions to the church. I don't pay my tithing.
I
don't pay tithing.
Some money to the church.
I'll still, because I think the work, their fast offerings, I think, are great. But at the same time, I pay to the homeless movement here in Salt Lake City.
Does your wife attend?
Neither of us does. We both had exactly the same reaction at the same time.
But you haven't chosen to remove your names from the church. Why not?
It's not important. To me, again, it's a statement. It's making a statement. And when I was on the High Council, I went through experiences when I say went through, because I don't, where people wanted to make a statement, have their name removed. To me, it was kind of like, why spend all that energy for something like that? You just walk away. I'm realizing different people. I respect that there are people who want to make a statement. They want to stand up for this is what I believe. And there are times that I stand up, but I'll stand up against something that I feel has the potential to really to harm people. But here again, it's is having my names removed from the church the equivalent of that? I don't think it is. Which is, my wife and I have talked about it. But we haven't decided not to.
So of your children, how many are still active and believing?
My oldest daughter is very active and believing.
The doctor. Where does she live?
In Oregon.
In Oregon. So she's still the golden child.
Yep. Well, she's not my golden child.
For the church.
Right. I'm saying, but she's very happy with it, and we all of us are very happy for her. We all support her in that choice.
And how many other children do you have?
We have. Well, I have 7 other children. McCann and I have 4 other children.
Okay, so of your 7 children,
she's the only one.
all the rest, what are their beliefs or?
They range from everything. Well, I take that back. My oldest son is active. He lives in Australia. He's active.
But maybe not totally believing?
Well, he's not as far. I know. I can't. I choose not to speak for him.
That's fine.
But he's not as active as my daughter is.
Okay.
But my point is that it's kind of like we just went to my wife's niece got married this weekend. So here's my mother-in-law. She has all these great grandchildren, and only one of them is active LDS. Only one. But they all love each other. They all prefer to be with each other. They all enjoy each other's company immensely. Sometimes they kid each other back and forth, but it doesn't divide us.
So, do you have any children who are polygamists?
No.
So none are believers in polygamy or followers of polygamy. And then how many of your kids just don't believe in the church at all?
Right. Some of them don't believe in church at all. Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't believe in church at all.
Now Lance has kind of come out openly non-believing.
Yeah.
Does he identify as atheist or agnostic or?
Well, I mean, here again, I'll let him tell you that.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about the fact that he's no longer believing or in the church?
I'm proud of him he knows what he wants, and I'm happy for him. And he's my son, and I support him completely.
Was there any part of you that's like, hey, come
Absolutely
on,
not.
stay in it, or hey, keep to the Book of Mormon because there's truth there?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because that would be inconsistent with who I am. I love all my children. Period. I love them all. Unconditionally. Which means that I not only accept what they are and who they are, but I love who they are and what they are. If my son's an atheist, I love the fact that he's an atheist.
What's it like to go through this epic Mormon fundamentalist and then Mormon journey, and then to now not be a part of it at all?
I know.
Do you ever wish you had just never been affiliated with it at all?
My wife and
just been like Baptist or?
Yeah, Tan and I talk about it.
What a mess!
It's kind of like going and see this really dramatic movie, and something gets to the very end. It's kind of like, you gotta be kidding me. That's not it. Okay, so I was talking about my children. All of my children are on the spectrum religiously, and it's real interesting because my daughter Tara she wanted to do LGBT long before it became popular with anybody. When she became a social worker, I mean, this is like 10 years ago. This is what I want to do, and then at the time I was very active Mormon. I was a member of the High Council, and I couldn't have been more proud of her. That's how she felt about it, and in my mind, good parents and good people love other people unconditionally, regardless of what they think, regardless of what they say, as long as they're not doing harm to someone else. And I refuse to participate in harm. And then you could say, well, if you don't stand up against something, then that's harming too. And I understand all of that. But I've seen so many people make choices in my life they become so involved against something that they don't stand for something. And so it's like I've done a lot of things in my life of which I'm really proud. The thing that has the greatest value to me is that I have these 8 incredible children. All of them have different beliefs. They'll have different views on so many things, except none of them has voted for Donald Trump. That's one thing I can say unequivocally. But the fact that I love them all completely is my greatest accomplishment. And that's the thing of which I'm most proud. I love them. He's the most famous one.
Lance. But you were going to say something else. You were talking about us having conversations or threads. You were coming in to say something about how you've thought about these things before.
Oh yeah. So
Do you remember what you were going to say?
Not specifically.
Okay, that's fine.
But there's just all these threads are going on, and but to me, I love the fact that there are these dialogues. I love the fact that people are talking about it, and I wish the church were open to that thing. I wish that were part of the heritage of the Mormon Church, as people be able to say, "Oh, wait a minute, I have a problem with Section 132, or I don't like Section 52, or I have a hard time believing that this Alma really existed." But instead, they're taboo subjects. You always, and that's just not healthy.
So my friend Lindsay Hanson Park, who did this podcast called Year of Polygamy, 100 episodes on polygamy, she says that for her, all the unhealthy things in the LDS church today come from polygamy in some way.
Yeah, well, okay. That's her view. I totally disagree with that.
Because I was going to say, this prohibition on open discussion about difficult topics, can you tie that to our polygamous heritage of like keep things quiet and obey, and obedience is better than, you know, everything? Like, for you, you don't make that connection.
Not at all.
Okay.
One of the most open, liberated societies of which I have ever read in my entire life was Utah before 1890, and the open discussion, the dialogues, and the search for meaning and search for learning and understanding, and it didn't matter if you were polygamist or not polygamist in the church. That's kind of like that. That's my Renaissance of Mormonism time.
So it's not polygamy that's necessarily the bad guy. It's the secrecy and the closed culture and the closed society.
Right. That's the bad
that was
guy.
toxic, not the polygamy itself.
Polygamy itself, I don't have anything good to say about polygamy, but in polygamy's defense, it's so common to all cultures in the world have had polygamy at some point or another in their history. It's the basic law of the jungle, you know, all the way from the very most, you know, the dominant male takes the women. That's not the issue to me in my mind. I far prefer monogamy. I love total equality between men and women. But if a woman chooses to go in polygamy, after knowing all this, being a totally liberated woman, let's say, like, for example, my wife, one of my daughters wanted to go into polygamy, I'd say, well, you know, to each his own. I don't think that's evil. I don't think it's bad. I would question their sanity or the judgment of people voting for Donald Trump. I've just been mind-boggled how many well-educated I think that guy would be a good president. But polygamy is not the issue. It's the secretive, closed society that enables them to have access to innocent people whom they can control and brutalize. That's what's wrong.
Do you still believe that God told Joseph to practice polygamy? Do you believe in section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants? That
one is a really, really hard question, and I honestly can't tell you. I can say I definitely don't. I don't disbelieve it, and I don't believe it right now. I'm kind of like, because really that is the most important revelation in all of Mormonism. It's kind of like the hinge on which it all turns. Not really. It's too significant of a piece to ignore, because it talks about so many things in it. But if that isn't true, then Mormonism isn't true. Mormonism cannot stand without that.
But you believe in Mormonism.
But Mormonism is based on the premise that you have a prophet who talks with God and who speaks for God.
And you're not seeing that.
Well, I know for sure I know God would not have said, those children may not come in my church because they're children of that same-sex marriage.
So are you saying you don't believe in Mormonism anymore?
I'm saying that right now they're having a crisis of leadership, and I'm having a crisis of followership.
But again, you're holding to the Book of Mormon as God's word.
Mm-hmm.
But you're questioning whether God's leading the church.
Right. And I realize here again that's an inconsistency.
So it's just a paradox.
Yeah, to me it's a paradox.
Okay. So for you, it's possible that God didn't tell Joseph Smith to be a polygamist.
It's possible. But still at the same time, it's just, I love all of your questions. It's, and to me, it's so significant, and I can only imagine how hard it is for a lot of people that I've heard the same discussion of, it goes like this: you love your son, even though he's gay. You accept your son's choices even though he's gay. Do you still believe in the church? But how can you believe in the church if you let your son who's gay come and have dinner with you? I've heard that dialogue too. And to me, it's ultimately you're looking at logic non sequiturs. Just because a woman loves her son and allows him into her house doesn't mean that she doesn't believe in the church anymore. Is she in harmony with the church's teachings? No. But so that's kind of like, I'm saying every question you're asking, my response would be kind of like, it's the same kind of thing. You know, you try to make a clear-cut yes or no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, slice it like that. But my point is that we humans are not like that. We want others to be like that, because so that we can understand how others think and how others feel. And we love to categorize and classify. But the real heart and core of us, I believe, is an immortal soul. I believe that. I've never changed on that. And I think in that dimension, I really honestly think when we leave this dimension, we'll go, what the heck was I so upset about that? Was that really that important? And one of the greatest horror things in my mind is to vision battle scenes, in World War I or World War II, where all these men killing each other. And then I believe their bodies lying dead and their spirits rise out of that and look at each other and kind of like, gosh, did we really just do that? And I think that's what Mormon culture is doing to itself right now. You have all these people who used to be really happy Mormons when their children didn't admit to being gay. I've had a mother say, pardon me, why couldn't he just not told me he was gay? Why couldn't he keep it a secret? And I think, well, yeah, lady, that would have made life easier for you. That would have made life easier for you, but this is your son we're talking about here. And sometimes I feel like I start to do that too with this whole thing. It's kind of like, because ultimately, and this sounds so stupid, but one of the greatest quotes of the 20th century was Rodney King. Can't we all just try to get along? And the fact that it just boggles my mind that the church leadership today, instead of saying, if you disagree with this, please, you're welcome to come to church. We won't condemn you. But to make it a litmus test that you're not a good member of the church unless you support this, That's like the temple recommend question here again at General Conference. I watched that last week when I was with my daughter in Oregon. And do you support the president of the church as prophets, teachers, and revelators? And they didn't go on. In essence, what they say at all times and in all things and in all ways. And with that one, and this is a cop-out. I know it's a cop-out. My great-grandfather was a Mormon in Utah, in Cache County. And he actually drove one of the relief wagons back to pick up the handcart company. And that's how he met my great-grandmother. And so this is the same guy, George Lloyd. And he was out working on his fences, and Brigham Young was coming up to speak in Logan. And all the farmers are going out to the road. We're going to go out and see President. Yeah, we're going to go out and see Brother Brigham. Aren't you coming with him? And he says, no, I'll see him tomorrow in Logan when he's the prophet. And I think that's been lost in Mormon culture. In that, I don't believe Thomas Monson, I don't believe Gordon B. Hinckley, whom I absolutely love, I don't think he was prophet all the time. I think he was prophet some of the time. I think he was prophet maybe 2% of the time. I don't know. But we Mormons love absolutes because we are the only religion that I can think of who claims to have all the truth. Islam doesn't claim that. Not even Catholicism claims that. We Mormons claim to have all the truth. And it's a paradox. We become the best educated people in the world because we're seeking for that. We want to be able to explain why.
So if I were to say, you seem to be saying you throw away logic and reason and even history because the feeling of your faith trumps all. Would you say that's fair?
In some things. In some things, yes.
In the core of your religious belief?
In the core of my religious beliefs. And so then ultimately then you realize, well, I'm no different from the polygamists. True. But you look at it, Mormonism is like any other faith. It comes down to ultimately you believe something because you choose to.
So you choose to?
I choose to.
Well, Vance Allred, thank you for joining us on Mormon Stories. It's been a real pleasure and a delight to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's been fun here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and listeners, we're going to interview Lance next. But please come to the mormonstories.org, leave comments, feedback, constructive feedback for Vance. If you have any insights or thoughts, please share. We're really grateful for your support. We're grateful for this time, and we'll be following this up with an interview of Vance's son Lance, who's got his own really interesting story. So again, Vance, thanks for coming on Mormon Stories, and good luck
Thank
with
you for
everything.
having me. Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.